midday in the heart of May. The sun was gentle, the breeze was kind, and Pinecrest Cafe, where every table whispered a silent speech about class, wealth, and relationships measured by handbag brands. William Hayes sat in stillness on a cream-colored velvet bench by the fountain. At 70, he no longer had anything to prove. Once dubbed the old tiger of Wall Street, a man who had flipped the market upside down during the 2008 crisis, William now embodied a kind of power that didn't need to speak. A tailored Italian suit hugged his frame, golden-rimmed glasses rested lightly on his nose, and one hand slowly turned the menu pages as though reading the investment report of a company about to be acquired. Across from him sat a striking woman with long black hair and bright red lips, Vanessa Hayes. His wife was nearly 40 years younger. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. A diamond-clad hand gently stirred her tea, her gaze fixed on her phone screen as if the text messages held more value than the man across from her. Everything looked perfect, at least from the outside. But near the edge of the bougainvillea-lined patio fence, another gaze was fixed on the scene inside. A 10-year-old black girl with tangled curly hair and an oversized faded hoodie that draped over her knees. Ava Carter. No one knew her name, no one had invited her in, and no one cared why a child was wandering outside a restaurant where the salad cost $80. But Ava watched closely. Every handshake exchanged between patrons, every frown from the waitstaff when a customer tapped a spoon too loudly, and most of all, the table with the mismatched couple, one old, one young. She didn't know their names. But with the hungry eyes of a homeless child, Ava understood one thing very clearly. Something beyond that patio railing was off. Not just because the food was plated so perfectly no one dared to touch it. Not because the wife smiled too sweetly when her husband wasn't looking, but because of his eyes. William Hayes, eyes that looked tired as if he'd been sitting there for years, but had never truly been seen by the person across from him. Ava clutched the edge of her hoodie. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but this time it wasn't food she lacked. It was instinct that grows sharp in children who have lived too long in the dark, and that instinct had just sensed something about to happen. The silver spoon rested silently on a spotless white tablecloth. Besides, there was a bowl of creamy corn bisque and the special lunch which the Pinecrest chef proudly called a work of art. But William Hayes hadn't touched it. He was still reading a message from his investment advisor. Across from him, Vanessa offered a faint smile, the kind that could fool those unfamiliar with its practiced sweetness. Then, casually, she placed her designer handbag on the chair, unzipped it, and pulled out a small glass vial capped in silver, resting perfectly in her palm like a tube of lipstick. Ava, still tucked behind the shrubs by the patio rail, didn't blink. She didn't know what the vial was, but what froze her wasn't the object, but how the woman moved. Calm, unrushed, unshaken, Vanessa tilted the vial, letting a few drops of colorless liquid fall into her husband's soup. No one saw, no one noticed. Except Ava. She held her breath, one drop, then two. The liquid dissolved seamlessly into the creamy yellow as if it had never existed. Vanessa picked up a spoon and stirred slowly, deliberately, like prepping a dish for a magazine photo shoot. No tension touched her face, only the faintest ghost of a smile. Then, leaning toward William, she whispered, but Ava still caught every word. "After everything I've done, you're not going to ruin it all, are you?" That sentence didn't belong at a romantic lunch. It wasn't affectionate, it wasn't resentful. It sounded like a warning, a veiled sentence. Ava stood frozen. Her heart pounded against her tiny chest like it might burst free. She didn't understand everything, but she knew enough to be afraid. Something was very, very wrong. Her eyes locked onto the soup bowl, where the older man was about to lift his spoon, utterly unaware that this lunch, it might be the last meal of his life. Ava was still there, frozen in place. Her tiny hands gripped the iron fence knuckles, turning white. She didn't know what the liquid was, but the way the woman had done it, like it was routine, not the first time, sent a chill crawling up Ava's spine. He's going to eat it and never get up again. The thought flashed through her mind, making her already aching stomach twist tighter. Not because of hunger, but because of fear. Fear that if she didn't say anything, something terrible would happen. But if she did speak up, who would believe a homeless, black, dirty little girl with no name, no identity? Standing outside a restaurant that only served people in tailored suits, she imagined how people would look at her like an animal loose in the garden. Go away, don't bother the guests, another ragged kid begging for money, and then her eyes darted back to the table. William had already picked up the spoon. Vanessa was still smiling, that same smile Ava knew she'd never forget. A smile without a soul. Ava swallowed hard. Her legs trembled. Her heart raced, pounding erratically. She thought of backing away, slipping back into the shadows she had lived in for so long. But a voice rose inside her. If I don't say it, who will? William leaned closer to the bowl. The spoon had just touched the surface of the thick golden soup. Just one slight movement. Ava inhaled sharply, her bony legs pushing her body from behind the shrubs. She ran to the edge of the fence, clutched the metal bars, and shouted with every ounce of courage left in her chest. Don't eat that, eat that. The scream tore through the gentle background music, shredded the elegant air that Pinecrest was so proud of. A few forks clattered onto plates. A waiter turned his head. A couple paused mid-conversation. And William stopped, the spoon frozen mid-air. His eyes slowly turned toward the fence and met the gaze of a tiny child, hair a tangled mess, face smudged with dirt, standing on the other side of his world, but who had just pulled him back from the brink of death. The spoon hovered just inches from William's mouth, his hand stiffened in mid-air. Not because the shout was loud, but because the voice wasn't disruptive. It was desperate, urgent, honest. William looked up, narrowing his eyes. He saw the little girl standing behind the fence. Her hands clenched tightly around the metal, her eyes wide with panic, as if she had just witnessed a car crash in slow motion that no one else could see. No one at Pinecrest was used to interruptions like this. Some patrons stood up, annoyed. A woman muttered, "Oh, great, another beggar child causing a scene." Waitstaff exchanged uneasy glances. And Vanessa snapped her head around, eyes narrowing like blades. What did that little girl just say? Her voice was sharp enough to draw blood. Ava trembled, but she didn't back down. She took a deep breath, then spoke in a small voice, but loud enough for the whole table to hear. I saw her put something in his soup. Please, don't eat it." No one spoke. A heavy silence rolled across the patio as if time had paused. William blinked and turned to look at his wife. Vanessa scoffed, her bright red lips curling like she was watching a foul play. "Darling, are you seriously going to believe a filthy little girl behind the fence?" Ava didn't flinch. Her face had gone pale. She knew that everything would fall apart if she said one wrong word. But still she continued firmer. "This time I saw it. A small bottle, clear liquid." She poured it into the soup, then stirred it. "I swear." William looked down at the spoon in his hand. The soup was still warm, but his hand was growing cold. He set the spoon down slowly, his eyes locked onto Vanessa. "Vanessa, what's going on here?" His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of stone, cold and solid. Vanessa shook her head and laughed, but the laugh was brittle this time. "This is ridiculous. Some prank. I bet someone sent this girl to extort us." The cafe no longer echoed with clinking glasses or shifting chairs. Now dozens of eyes were focused on one table. A billionaire, a wife, and a child no one knew. Ava stepped forward, still clinging to the fence. Her voice rose steadily now, no longer shaking. I don't want money. I don't want him to get hurt. And in that exact moment, William didn't look at Ava like a stranger for the first time, but like someone who had just woken him from a dream that lasted far too long. The atmosphere at Pinecrest Cafe was no longer that of a peaceful afternoon. It felt more like a stage strung with tension where every stare was a spotlight and every word had the power to reveal or conceal a crime. Vanessa stood up abruptly. The leather chair screeched across the marble floor, the sound sharp and metallic. She looked at William no longer with the affectionate gaze of a wife, but with the frantic eyes of someone desperate to hold on to a performance unraveling by the second. "You're doubting me," she asked, her voice rising. "You're letting some homeless child humiliate your wife in front of everyone." William didn't answer. He simply looked. A gaze that was deep and silent, as if for the first time he truly wanted to see through the perfect image Vanessa had crafted over the years. Vanessa snapped her head toward Ava. Her eyes now carried something, no longer contempt, but fear. "Little girl, who are you? Who sent you? Did someone hire you?" Her voice trembled, though she tried to sound dominant. Ava didn't answer. She just looked straight back. Those dark, glistening eyes are incapable of lying. No script, no plan, just the truth. William spoke suddenly, his voice soft like a breeze. "What's your name, Ava, sir?" the girl replied. "And you're sure of what you saw?" "Absolutely." Vanessa laughed, the sound echoing among the crystal glasses, making a few diners flinch. "This is absurd. A 10-year-old girl in torn shoes is lying for what, a free meal? A little sympathy." She turned to William, making her final move. "You're going to destroy my reputation over some made-up story from a homeless kid." William didn't respond, but Ava had stepped forward, crossing the fence without waiting for permission. She walked toward the table, trembling but determined, stopping just beside the spot where Vanessa once held power, and was now losing all of it. "I'm not making anything up. I'm not begging for food. I don't want money. I just couldn't stay silent. When I saw someone was about to get hurt, everything stopped." For a moment, those who had frowned earlier, annoyed by the disturbance. Now I looked at the girl with new eyes, no longer disgust but respect. William slowly turned back toward the bowl of soup. He no longer wanted to eat. He was staring at a silence he should have noticed long ago. The silver spoon now lay quietly at the edge of the plate, like a piece of unspoken evidence. William didn't say a word. He just observed, and in that gaze the thing Vanessa feared most became visible. He was beginning to doubt her. The wind rustled the oak trees surrounding Pinecrest, making the once elite setting feel hollow and unnervingly cold. Vanessa clenched her handbag tightly, her nails digging into the faux leather. "You're doubting me?" she asked, her voice shaking not from emotion but from losing control. William didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to Ava, the child still standing tall, not avoiding anyone's gaze. "What exactly did you see, Ava? Be precise." She nodded, breathing fast. "A small bottle, clear. Like medicine." She poured it into the soup when you weren't looking, then stirred. After that, she leaned in and whispered something. William nodded. He turned back to Vanessa, and for the first time Vanessa didn't have an answer ready. She stammered, She's making it up. She must have seen something wrong. Maybe it was the light or her imagination. Kids do that." But her words fell flat. No longer did anyone in the cafe look at Vanessa with admiration. Now it was suspicion, caution, judgment. From a seat near the fountain, a gentleman whispered, "If she's innocent, why not just test the soup?" A waiter nearby nodded slightly and stepped back to call the manager. Guests began pulling out their phones, not to photograph the ambiance, but to record history. Vanessa looked around. Her lips quivered. For the first time, she felt the crowd slipping from her control. "I don't have to take this," she snapped. "I didn't come here to be humiliated." She grabbed her purse, preparing to walk away. But William, with a sudden move, placed his hand firmly on her wrist. "You're not going anywhere, not until this is cleared up." Vanessa froze. She was no longer the poised woman from the start of lunch, no longer the model admired by May-December couples, but a woman was on the verge of falling from the mask she had spent years constructing. Ava still stood there, her eyes following every word, every breath. And if one looked closely, they'd see her tiny hands tightening into fists, not from fear, but because the truth was starting to win. Vanessa's wrist was still beneath William's hand, an old hand but now unyielding like cold steel. She gave a slight tug, but he didn't let go. "William," her voice softened, trembling. You can't seriously doubt me like this. It's humiliating." He looked straight into her eyes. "Yes, humiliating. If it's true, but if it isn't." He released her wrist and sat up straight, then let the proper authorities decide. He turned to the nearby waiter voice, low but firm, "Call the police." The already silent cafe exploded with stunned glances. Some guests covered their mouths. A woman whispered, "Oh my God, he's serious." And Vanessa, she stumbled back as if struck by an invisible slap. "No, William, no, we don't need to make a scene in this family matter. If you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear." His eyes never left hers. Vanessa began to tremble. Her hand clutched her silk purse tightly so her nails pressed deep into the fabric. The flawless makeup on her face had begun to crack, like a mask softened by water. At the corner of the patio, Ava remained still. Her eyes followed every movement, every word. As if witnessing something she never truly believed possible, adults were listening. The rich were trusting a child no one knew. The restaurant manager rushed over, breathless. "Sir, the police are on their way." William nodded without a word. Vanessa turned to leave, but he stopped her. "Vanessa, if you walk away now, that's your confession." The words ripped through the illusion of composure she had tried so hard to maintain all lunch long. She froze in place, back straight as if still trying to hold herself together for one last time. But her eyes no longer held confidence, only the despair of someone who knew she had lost. Meanwhile, Ava quietly took a step back. She didn't need to say anything more. The truth by now was speaking for itself. In the distance, a faint siren began to wail. Not loud, but loud enough to tighten the chest of everyone present. Vanessa closed her eyes. Just minutes ago, she had been the most beautiful, coldest, and most powerful woman in this refined world of wine glasses and linen napkins. Now she felt like she was standing in an expensive dress. Before the storm of truth, two officers entered the cafe. Uniforms crisp, eyes sharp, no directions were needed. Every gaze was already fixed on the center table. The older man was sitting calmly, and the woman beside him, hands slightly shaking, lips pressed tight. One of the officers spoke voice level but firm. "We received a report of possible poisoning." "Who made the call?" William pointed at the soup bowl. "I did. The girl over there. She saw something, and I believe her." Ava stepped forward. Her small, skinny legs moved steadily, as if carrying an entire truth on her back. The officer looked at her gently. "What's your name?" "Ava Carter." "What did you see, Ava?" She recounted it all. Every detail, every motion Vanessa made, as if each moment had been recorded not by memory, but by the unblinking eye of truth. A small vial, clear liquid, a stirring hand, and the chilling whisper, "You're not going to ruin everything." Vanessa didn't interrupt. She had no strength left. One officer leaned down and sniffed the soup, then turned back, voice serious. "Ma'am, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Vanessa tightened her grip on her purse, but said nothing. Her eyes met William's, and shattered. No more denial, no more mocking smiles, just a woman who had realized her life's scheme was collapsing. She turned to the officer's, voice hoarse. "He doesn't love me anymore. He was going to change the will. I couldn't lose everything. William looked at her, not with anger, just silence, like a man who had lost 20 years of trust, in 20 seconds of truth. The officer nodded. "Ma'am, are you admitting that you attempted to poison Mr. William Hayes?" A pause. Then Vanessa nodded, as if there was nothing left to hold together. "I just wanted to be free from his shadow, to be seen as someone who deserved it all." Her final words crumbled into tears, not tears of remorse, but tears of a woman who had lost control, lost power, and lost the most outstanding performance of her life. The officer reached out and cuffed her wrists. The click was sharp, cold, and final. Vanessa didn't resist. She said nothing, and as she walked away under the gaze of dozens, she knew no one looked at her with admiration anymore. No one. Except Ava, the only one who didn't bow her head, who didn't hate, only watched as if she had long known. Even the powerful can be wrong. The click of the handcuffs was faint, but in the elegant silence of Pinecrest, it rang like a verdict. Vanessa didn't resist. She walked between the two officers, her head held high, but her eyes vacant. She was no longer the woman who once turned heads at red carpet galas, but she had twisted a hollow figure walking out of a dream into her illusion. William did not stand. He remained motionless, hands folded lightly on the table. In front of him, the untouched bowl of soup, a dish crafted with the finest ingredients by a renowned chef, and one that had nearly become a silent weapon. No one in the cafe dared to speak. Only the sound of police footsteps escorting Vanessa away from Pinecrest remained, followed by stunned, awkward, and even ashamed glances from those who had looked down on the little girl just moments ago. Ava was still there. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She watched a world shifting right in front of her. As the sirens faded beyond the tree line, William lowered his head and ran a hand down his face. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to do next. A small hand gently touched the edge of the table. Ava stood there. No words of comfort, no apologies, no pity, just a presence timely and deeply human. William looked up. His eyes, still red, met hers dark and steady. No fear, no hesitation, no expectation. He exhaled the breath of a man who had just walked a long road with his heart. "You don't have to stay anymore," he said, his voice hoarse. "You've done more than anyone." Ava shook her head, soft but firm. "I can't leave. Not while you're still sitting here like that." William was taken aback. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not a consultant, not a board member, not a business partner. Only a 10-year-old girl, homeless without family, but with the courage to look a man in the eye who had just come inches from death, and not flinch. A pause of silence, then he motioned gently toward the seat across from him. "Sit, Ava." She carefully pulled out the chair. For the first time in her life, she sat across from someone like him, and didn't feel small. William placed his hands on the table, voice, "Lucy, you've helped me realize that sometimes we need to listen to voices from places we've always ignored." Ava gave a faint smile. She didn't speak, because some thanks don't need to be said out loud. The chair across from William Hayes had once been Vanessa's, once reserved with napkins folded into swans. Champagne poured just right and desserts tailored to Madam's taste. Now no napkin, no swan, just a 10-year-old girl in a chair too high for her feet, not even touching the floor. Ava sat still, hands resting on her lap, eyes fixed on William. A man who once commanded global corporations, now sitting before her with no armor, no mask. William picked up a glass of water and sipped slowly. If I had just lifted that spoon, everything would have ended. His eyes never left the glass. Ava nodded gently. "I thought you would eat." "So did I," William replied. "Because I'm used to no one having the courage to tell me the truth anymore. No one dares. Or no one cares." He set the glass down and turned to her. "You're the only one who dared to interrupt my world. To save it." Ava looked down at the table. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't save you to be thanked. I just couldn't stay silent." William said nothing for a long while. The wind drifted through the open windows, carrying the scent of toasted bread and early-season oak leaves. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table, his gaze soft but sincere. "Do you know how many people have sat in that chair, and I never truly saw them?" Ava looked up. William continued, "Too many. But today, for the first time, I see someone." That chair was no longer a symbol of power. It was now a symbol of listening and possibility. He leaned back, releasing a long breath, not the breath of a businessman, but of a man who had just awakened from a long illusion. "Thank you, Ava," she smiled, not brightly, just a small, honest smile, but sincere enough to make someone believe in something better. Around them, the cafe slowly resumed its rhythm. But at table 7, something had changed. A once empty chair was no longer empty, and a soul once forgotten was finally heard. William slowly reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and took out his phone. It was a familiar motion he made daily to shift markets, issue million-dollar commands, or terminate underperforming executives. But today, he dialed a different number, a number he rarely used but had never deleted. Ava watched him, a flicker of worry in her eyes. She said nothing, but her glance was hesitant. "Who is he calling? Did I do something wrong?" William caught her look and offered a gentle smile. "Not the police," he said, half joking, half sincere. "An old friend, someone I only call when someone truly worthy needs help." The call connected. William spoke briefly. His voice was low, steady. Each word is measured like currency. "There's a girl, 10 years old, homeless. But she has a heart this world needs to learn from." Ava didn't hear the whole conversation, but something inside her stirred, not fear but hope. When William hung up, he turned to her. "They're on their way, a reputable private organization, not like the city's shelters. You'll have a place to sleep tonight, a real meal, and if you want, a whole new beginning." Ava stared at him wide-eyed. "Why would you do that for me?" William leaned back in his chair, hands clasped together. "Because you did what so few people ever dare to do. You stood up. You spoke the truth. When no one asked you to, when you had nothing to lose and nothing to protect." Ava looked down. She wasn't used to kindness from people like him. Kindness without condition, without exchange. Only the belief that she deserved a better life. "I didn't do it to be helped," Ava murmured. William nodded. "Exactly why I want to help you." Outside, a black SUV pulled to a stop. A woman in professional attire stepped out, holding a folder in her hand. William glanced outside, then back at Ava. "They're here, but if you don't want to go, I won't force you." Ava looked at him, then at her own small, calloused hands, then at the chair she had just occupied. And finally, she nodded. "I want to try." No one applauded, no one cheered, but in that moment, a life that had nearly been forgotten, it was beginning again. The SUV door opened. Ava approached slowly, pausing at the curb. She turned back to table 7, where the bowl of untouched soup still sat, and a half-empty glass of water stood beside it. William was still there, no longer William Hayes, billionaire of Wall Street, but a man who had survived thanks to the truth and a stranger's voice. Ava gave a slight nod and a silent farewell, and he was a man once bowed to by the financial world. Nodded back. No more words were needed. Because sometimes gratitude isn't spoken, it's felt in the way we begin to see others differently. Afternoon light spilled across Pinecrest, casting long shadows through the glass windows onto the table where two worlds once sat across from each other. The chair across from William was empty again. But this time, it wasn't alone, because he knew someone had once sat there not to prove anything, but to awaken a room, a system, and his own heart. That night, as news outlets began reporting the arrest of the young wife of a Wall Street billionaire, two names emerged above all. William Hayes is the victim, and Ava Carter, the one who spoke up. No one knew who the girl had been. No school records, no address, no known relatives, just a short video clip, capturing the moment she stood at the fence, her eyes lit with defiance among doubters, and screamed, "Don't eat that." One social media post went viral. That girl did what hundreds of educated, influential, privileged people didn't. She stood up for a stranger. She told the truth in a place full of lies wrapped in silk napkins. The following week, William didn't return to Pinecrest, but he was seen visiting a center for underprivileged children, not as a donor, but as someone willing to listen. And Ava now had a new home, a real bed, and a meal she didn't have to hide in her hoodie. But more importantly, she had a name people remembered, not because she was pitiful, but because she was brave. And if anyone ever asked William Hayes what changed him most in 70 years of living among power, he would smile, sip his tea, and answer, a child. No business card, no address, just a pair of eyes that looked straight into the truth, and a heart that wasn't afraid. Because sometimes, the strongest person in the room isn't the one with the most money, but the one who dares to speak the right words when everyone else stays silent.